Okay, so there's this really cool animated horror video on YouTube called Jordan Peterson, 12 More Rules by Amon Animations, and I cannot get it out of my head. You can tell just by having a gander at this thing for more than 2 seconds that it's an aesthetically unique experience, to say the least. Upon my first viewing, its contents came across as deeply unsettling yet oddly thought-provoking despite the surrealist, fever dream presentation of its ideas. The video is also chock full of symbolism and references to a variety of political content creators, all of which can be pretty easy to miss if you aren't going into the video with a critical eye. So, as YouTube's resident overthinker of that which is criminally underrated, I'm interested in analyzing this video as its own unique work of art. Throughout this video, I'm going to be trying to answer 2 questions, the first of which is as follows. What is the video trying to tell us about the inner psyche of Canadian psychologist / right-wing thought leader / self-help author Jordan B. Peterson? The second and most important question I'll be trying to answer, though, is this. What is the video trying to tell us about the nature of conservative self-help culture? Watch the 5-minute video if you haven't, link in the doobly-doo, and if you already have, let's begin. We begin the video with the news that Jordan Peterson has been trapped in a coma for some time. His life support system consists of being fed pure meat through a tube. This absurdist medical recommendation is a reference to the fact that JP's daughter, Michaela Peterson, has gained most of her popularity by promoting an all-meat diet, which she sells not only as a means of making you healthier, but also as a miracle cure for Lyme disease, arthritis, depression, and so much more. By the way, yes, this is the cover of her book. I did not go into Photoshop and create the shoddiest possible cover on my own. You can even see said cover in the video. JP's relationship with meat plays a symbolic role throughout the rest of this video, so just keep that in mind as we proceed. During his comatose state, Peterson envisions himself hosting a self-help panel with Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager is best known for creating a YouTube channel called Prager University, which is aimed at spreading conservative values through short-form videos. For many, including myself, Prager's YouTube channel is somewhat of a joke. Anyone who seriously engages critically with its contents will frequently find that the ironically titled Prager University primarily uses emotional appeals to reinforce the pre-existing political beliefs of people who already hold culturally traditional views. If only there was a word for that. During this panel, Prager lauds the moral imperative of making oneself happy, his reasoning being that happy people make the world a better place. From this, we understand Prager's role in this dynamic. He is selling the crowd happiness, and the audience is eating this all up. What is of course fascinating about the audio in this video is that most of it is derived from actual sound bites that have been spoken by these people in real life, which helps ground the characters. The video creator isn't putting words in anyone's mouth, but is instead just letting these people speak for themselves. Peterson responds to Prager's assertion about the moral imperative of happiness with a tearful rant about the movie Pinocchio, in which he presents Geppetto's desire to bring Pinocchio to life as something truly sublime. Listening to this soundbite in isolation, though, draws attention to the absolute absurdity and hypersentimentality of Peterson's monologue, which is essentially just a banal summary of the events of the film, elevated through the use of a large vocabulary to invoke a sense of deeper meaning. He ends the tearful rant by proclaiming, "And we start as puppets. And the trick is to get rid of your goddamn strings." Of course, the audience laps this up as well, with one demon audience member begging Peterson to tell him how to live. We then cut to Joe Rogan's podcast, in which the pseudoscience peddling host commends Peterson's all-meat diet, stating that he's never heard of someone having a negative experience with it. Throughout his exchanges with Peterson, Rogan gradually transforms into an ape. This transformation could symbolically reflect that Joe Rogan is suggesting a return to a more primitive diet, and hence becoming more primitive. It could alternatively refer to the fact that Rogan has frequently professed an irrational fear of an impending primate invasion.
If there was as many chimps as there were people, you would never be able to get to your car. They would mug you every chance they got. They would rip your fucking feet off.
Peterson's response to Rogan is that he does indeed have a negative story regarding his all-meat diet, one in which he decided to break the rules and drink some apple cider, the result of which filled him with, in Peterson's own words, an overwhelming sense of impending doom. Just to reiterate, yes, this is something that Peterson actually said while on Rogan's podcast, that this supposedly super healthy all-meat diet caused him to have a mental breakdown because of the sulfites found in apple cider. So, be sure to buy the book, I guess. We now cut to the climax of the video, in which we see the result of Peterson's apple cider consumption. In his state of peril, Peterson imagines himself standing atop a pile of heads, gradually being surrounded by popular figures in the online conservative political sphere. The first of whom is famed conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, portrayed in a frogified form as a reference to his famous unhinged rant in which he accuses the American government of trying to
turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The second appearance is that of Turning Point USA founder and lover of Simone Biles, Charlie Kirk, who says the phrase, "We are intrinsically tied to the president. He's with us, he's here for us." This phrase is illustrated poetically by having said yammering president infused to Kirk's stomach, ranting about how much he hates windmills because they kill birds. The fact that Trump's sole words pertain to his hatred of windmills beckons to mind the character Don Quixote, who is oftentimes alluded to as literature's quintessential quixotic fool. In the novel of the same name, Quixote famously engages in battles against windmills, falsely mistaking them for giants. Next is Tim Pool, a man who purports to be an objective journalist yet uses the veneer of anti-elitism and anti-establishment sentiments to spend his time basically just creating conspiracy theories about progressive culture. A common meme in circles that are critical of Tim Pool is the mystery behind why he always wears his signature beanie. This depiction of him thus represents such a fashion choice as necessary in order to help hide a second head. Next up is the Trump-supporting televangelist Kenneth Coleman, who makes a living by convincing poor and desperate people that he can heal them through their televisions. After him comes Ben Shapiro, who, while often touted as one of the most well-learned of the new conservative movement, is here heard reciting the lyrics to Cardi B's WAP. This, of course, refers to when Ben notoriously made a fool of himself by trying to analyze the lyrics to WAP, in which he accidentally revealed his lack of sexual understanding by claiming that your woman getting wet somehow means she needs to go see a doctor. No better quote from Ben Shapiro could have been used to highlight the fact that he often uses intelligentsia as an aesthetic, while his points are often trite and misinformed. Lastly is the multi-armed man himself, Dennis Prager, rising above all of the other conservative swindlers, resting in a sky dominated by giant heads. Given what we saw from him earlier, we see his presence as a microcosm of what all of the other conservative talking heads aim to achieve, reinforcing the viewer's culturally traditional values at all costs. To me, this setting beckons to mind the anime film The End of Evangelion, whose apocalyptic conclusion is pretty iconic and loosely matches the aesthetic of this part of the video. The apocalyptic imagery illustrates Peterson's realization that the new conservative movement that he finds himself a part of is led by a combination of pseudo-intellectual fools, grifters, and propagandists. The video depicts Peterson as very self-aware and struggling with the realization that this new form of conservatism that he pushes for is ultimately a scam that causes people demonstrable harm to those who consume it. As presented in the video, Peterson is smart enough to realize that the company that he keeps has been growing increasingly anti-intellectual, and this terrifies him. At last, Peterson awakens from his comatose state and is confronted by a smiling demonic cow, which I argue is the ultimate symbolic manifestation of his temptation to continue feeding people bogus self-help. There are three main things that this cow stands to represent. The first is that Peterson's relationship with meat largely mirrors his relationship with self-help. You see, in 2019, Peterson was unfortunately admitted to a rehab center, and while I'm not a fan of Peterson's, I'm glad that he sought out the help that was needed, and I am in no way shaming him for his addiction. However, similar to how his daughter sells her harmful diet under the guise of helping people, Peterson too sells a sham ideology, one that he himself has evidenced doesn't work. As revealed in the Rogan interview, Peterson knows that eating an all-meat diet is bad for him, but continues to promote it anyway. Similarly, he promotes a lifestyle that revolves around cleaning your room, maintaining order, and solely looking at one's dissatisfaction from the lens of social responsibility instead of acknowledging systemic injustices in the world. This clearly hasn't worked for him. And to be clear, I'm not mocking Peterson for his addiction, as I know firsthand that good, strong people are just as susceptible as anyone else. This video is merely pointing out the irony of Peterson's existence, one in which he touts a variety of lifestyles and worldviews that he himself has proven demonstrably fail. The cow is thus a poignant manifestation of the ills that Peterson's ideology can cause. Secondly, the cow symbolically alludes to the idea of a false idol. This tradition largely stems from the golden calf that was decried by Moses as a false idol in biblical scripture. The idea here is that Peterson's fans idolize him like he's the damn messiah, to the point where any criticism of him is usually met with a bombardment of dislikes and a "you're taking him out of context" comments. However, given this video's depiction of Peterson as self-aware, he knows full well that his own self-help doesn't actually work, thus making him a false prophet that his fans worship. Thirdly, the cow represents the wealth that Peterson can accrue from selling his bad advice. The idea of a cash cow as something that can provide a steady stream of income suggests that pride is not the sole motivator of Peterson's continued misinformation, but also the exorbitant amount of money that one can make from selling his ideas to desperate people. All of these three interpretations are reinforced by the words spoken by the cow. 12 more rules. What is natural must be right. Eat your meat and worship might. Stand up straight, listen carefully, accept your place within the hierarchy. Clean your room, pray to God, obey your lords with 12 new rules. Think of all the cash, think of all the seeds. Don't you think the world needs 12 more rules? While the cow tempts Peterson, a different voice beckons to him, that of the puppeteer Geppetto and Jiminy Cricket. Given Peterson's previous monologue about Pinocchio, we understand that Geppetto represents Peterson's desire to be free from his strings, in this case, free from the lie that he has to fabricate around his phony self-help. Furthermore, Jiminy Cricket is literally a manifestation of Pinocchio's consciousness, meaning that this duo does not solely represent Peterson's desire to be free of lies, but also his guilty conscience at the thought of scamming people. However, as the two try to sway Peterson, the cow grows in size, and so too grows its influence over Peterson, until finally the man caves and chooses to follow the cow over the delightful Disney characters. The final shot of the video is that of Peterson at a dinner table in puppet form. This is an especially haunting image to end on, particularly if you're aware of the context of the lines that Geppetto and Jiminy spoke while they were trying to convince Peterson to stop swindling people. The lines are from the Disney adaptation, in which Pinocchio and the gang have just escaped Monstro the whale. At this point in the story, Pinocchio is thought to be dead, and Jiminy and Geppetto are begging for him to return. However, in the words of the fairy that brought Pinocchio to life in the first place, prove yourself brave, truthful, and unselfish, and someday you will be a real boy. And so, Pinocchio proves himself to be selfless, brave, and honest by trying to save his father from the whale, and the movie thus ends with him finalizing his transformation into a real boy. However, in Peterson's case, he has failed to follow his own advice and tell the truth, both to himself and to his followers. He has failed to prove himself brave, truthful, and unselfish. And so he sits, eating his meal like a good little puppet, being as wealthy as he is trapped by pride and desire. And so the video ends with one last haunting line from Geppetto pointed at Peterson. "You're dead, Pinocchio." Hey guys, thanks for watching this little video. Sorry I've been gone for a little while, but Serena and I decided to take a little break for the summer. But now we're going to be back in the full swing of things, and I've got a whole bunch of videos coming up for you guys. We're going to try to keep that 2 videos a month thing going for at least a little while. And then depending on how big the later projects are, I might switch over to once a month. Depends how I feel. But yeah, more content on the way. Thank you guys for being patient. Catch you later.